The story begins with a boy named Ryuka, who despises everything around him, including the general. The only thing he enjoys is music. When he's told to blow the horns to signal the soldiers to march, he does it reluctantly. After a tough battle, the soldiers start collecting their fallen enemies' heads as trophies. Among the remains, Ryuka finds a blood-stained trumpet and feels excited to have discovered a new instrument. Meanwhile, the soldiers receive a message from the general about their next target, Papal State. Then we meet Gerhardt, who is carving a mark on an enemy's face, hoping it will leave an impression if he dies in battle. Ryuka, still searching for comfort, goes to Gerhardt to ask for her pay, but finds out she won't receive it until she pays off her upbringing debt. Another soldier remarks that blowing the horn looks easy. Gerhardt agrees, saying it's nothing compared to fighting on the front line. He challenges Ryuka to show her skill. Rising to the occasion, Ryuka blows the horn so powerfully that it echoes for miles. The soldiers immediately gain new respect for the difficulty of the task. Later that night, while looking for musical instruments, Ryuka discovers a trumpet and finds a boy hiding in a barrel. Instead of alerting the soldiers, she talks to the boy, learning about his sharp hearing and his love for music. She shares this with Gerhardt, who encourages the boy to enjoy life and asks if he likes blowing the horn. The boy nods enthusiastically. The next day, as the battle begins, Gerhardt surprises Ryuka by telling her that instead of blowing the horn, she'll be fighting on the front line. Meanwhile, another musician, Zoe, amazes Gerhardt's army with her powerful horn playing. Realizing how vital Ryuka's retreat signal is, Gerhardt sends his men to find her. In the chaos, Ryuka is injured by a splinter that pierces her kidney. Carried to the back and told to rest, Ryuka, despite the pain, grabs her horn and signals a path for the soldiers. Gerhardt understands the signals and guides the troops to safety, recognizing Ryuka's leadership through her horn signals. As they retreat, Gerhardt notices the enemy is still following. He leaves Colin in charge of the camp and stays behind to hold off the attackers to protect his men. Meanwhile, a nobleman comforts Ryuka, assuring her. Gerhardt returns, wounded, bringing the enemy general, Zoe, and another companion with him. The opposing general, Aramis, reveals shocking news to Ryuka, exposing that he isn't just an ordinary human. He explains that the light coming from Ryuka signifies Aramis' power, giving Ryuka a new sense of identity and setting up future twists. Aramis unexpectedly invites Ryuka to join his army as a hornblower. However, Gerhardt steps in, saying that if Ryuka leaves, Aramis must teach him music, a condition Aramis accepts. With a heavy heart, Ryuka agrees to join Aramis. Before leaving, he looks to Gerhardt for approval of his music skills, with tears in his eyes. After Ryuka departs, Gerhardt admits he is no musician, but acknowledges Ryuka's talent. Tragically, enemy soldiers soon decapitate him. Ryuka wakes up beside Aramis in Terumi, now the Papal State's capital. Aramis introduces himself as the Pope, the state's ruler. Ryuka shares his background with the mercenaries and his dream of being a musician. Aramis expresses his wish for Ryuka to protect the tower, a relic from an advanced ancient civilization holding cultural and technological wisdom. He explains the tower's dual importance as both the foundation of civilization and a revered religious symbol. Aramis asserts his authority over the institution overseeing the tower. Ryuka, feeling regret, admits he didn't understand the situation earlier due to his upbringing. Aramis then leads Ryuka to his new residence, Sequoia Mansion, where he'll live among other Reimais. In the mansion, Aramis explains the Reimais' exceptional powers, which go beyond human comprehension. He adds that both soldiers and citizens know of these abilities, and rumors about them spread widely. As they walk to Ryuka's room, they pass a beautiful trumpet that immediately catches Ryuka's eye. Aramis smiles, explaining the trumpet's fine craftsmanship and saying he envisions Ryuka using it to serve their country. Before officially enlisting Ryuka, he asks for another demonstration of his powers. On their way, they meet Zoe and Temi, and Ryuko is warmly introduced. Zoe even apologizes for an earlier incident involving a shoe. Soon after, Aramis points to the towers, passionately explaining their significance. He reveals that the twin towers hold invaluable knowledge in architecture, languages, weapon design, and currency secrets. Aramis stresses that the tower's technology and knowledge directly strengthen national power, making their protection crucial. He wants Ryuka to fully understand why his help is needed to defend the towers, briefly explaining other key functions. Aramis shares that neighboring countries often send ships to cut off their trade routes, further underscoring the tower's importance. Ryuka's mission is to safeguard the tower from these external threats. Soon, Pietro, the commander, is introduced. Aramis then leads Ryuka to a wall's edge, where an entire battalion stands ready, illustrating Aramis' control over the forces. Aramis assigns Ryuka the task of leading the soldiers below. Meanwhile, on an enemy ship, a companion asks the captain about their strategy, and the captain reveals they're waiting for siege machines to breach the gates. Suddenly, a ray of light alerts the soldiers inside. Aramis directs Ryuka to eliminate all enemy soldiers on the beach with the promise of allowing him to keep the trumpet. Ryuka, acknowledging his lack of experience in battle, sets clear terms and warns against any blame if he fails. General Jihad reassures Ryuka, emphasizing the value of learning from mistakes and assures him he won't be blamed for any missteps. With this, the battle begins, and Ryuka confidently leads the soldiers, using the light and rhythm of his music to guide them. Despite the enemy's tight defense, Ryuka continues directing the charge with his horn. When the enemy tries to take advantage of an opening in the gates, they fall into a trap set by Jert's strategic planning. The intentionally open gates draw the enemy into a vulnerable position. This carefully crafted strategy, led by Ryuka and carried out by the soldiers, showcases their unity and their trust in Ryuka's leadership. Their success boosts Ryuka's confidence and highlights the power of his unique abilities. Zoe is then tasked with eliminating the soldiers caught inside, and Jihad explains that Zoe is one of his best fighters. As the battle ends, Ryuka successfully leads the troops to victory, relying solely on his trumpet to command them. The general formally welcomes Ryuka into their ranks and introduces him to the Empire of Arin, their main adversary. He asks Demi to share a vision with Ryuka, revealing her special gift of sight. Demi shows him a vision of the Empire of Arin, where Ryuka notices a towering structure in the background. The general explains that there are 9 towers in total, with the towers in the Papal States and the Empire being exceptionally large. He shares that they want to eliminate someone known as the Garland Ramus. The general asks for Ryuka's help, and Ryuka agrees, as long as he can quit afterward and still receive tuition support. The general accepts these terms. Ryuka asks about Garland's power, and the general explains that Garland destroyed an entire country in one blow 4 months ago, leaving only ruins. Frustrated and feeling helpless, Ryuka's discontent with the world remains. General Jihad then assigns Ryuka to care for the Ramus, stressing their importance and asking Ryuka to keep them safe and prepared. Ryuka doubts anyone would take on such a task. Later, he finds Miri, another Ramai, tied up in a room. After releasing her, Miri mentions she's new to the mansion and reassures Ryuka that things aren't as bad as they appear. She gives him a tour and explains their routine, which includes combat training, horse riding, and occasionally dressing up for mansion patrols. However, Ryuka notices that no one is actually training at the grounds. Miri mentions that they don't even eat together. Despite this, she finds comfort in Ryuka's company. Their chat is interrupted by Demi, who announces that all the Ramais have been tasked with retaking a captured fortress. A soldier briefs General Jihad about the fortress, explaining that it was once an important logistics base but has fallen into neglect. The enemy force is small, consisting of only about 100 men. With tensions rising and the situation becoming more complicated, Ryuka and the Ramais prepare for the mission to reclaim the fortress. Later, Demi gives Ryuka a blindfold and explains that the mission will take place at night, so they need to be ready. When Miri starts to cry, Ryuka notices his own fear. Miri admits he is scared about using his powers. Ryuka remembers Zoe's fierce fighting style, suggesting that bravery takes many forms. Miri counters that comparing himself to Zoe isn't fair since they have very different roles. He shares that he was teased in childhood because of a branch on his head, which he believes adds to his current fears. Miri admits that he once tried to escape the mansion, which led to his current situation. However, he is determined to complete their mission and trusts Ryuka to support him if necessary. As the soldiers stand in the captured area, they notice a guard from the Papal State across the bridge, increasing the tension. General Jihad reassures Ryuka that Demi will help them with her vision. As the moment to act arrives, Ryuka uses the guiding light from his horn, and Miri efficiently follows his lead. However, Ryuka realizes that the general intends for Miri to attack the fortress alone, placing the responsibility for Miri's safety firmly on Ryuka. The general emphasizes the importance of leadership and accountability to Ryuka, preparing him for possible losses. Despite the weight of this responsibility, Ryuka continues to guide Miri with the light while also receiving insights from Demi's vision. Their teamwork sets the stage for a challenging but strategic mission. Meanwhile, a man eating his rye bread realizes it might be his last meal. Suddenly, Miuri rushes past him and takes him out in an instant. Miuri follows Ryuka's guiding lights, swiftly eliminating anyone in his way as they move through the captured territory. The remaining enemies flee, signaling victory for the trio, with the general congratulating them. He especially praises Miuri for successfully carrying out the operation. Ryuka then asks why Miuri didn't signal for his escape as instructed. Miuri replies that having Ryuka by his side made all the difference. Miura asked the general for permission to quit his job, similar to Ryuka's earlier decision. The general questions Miura's determination, making sure he is certain. To clarify, the general asks if Miura wants to quit after taking down Garland, with Ryuka adding that the general must ensure Miura has a good life afterward. However, the general stresses Ryuka's commitment to Miura and explains that captains decide their men's futures. He then asks Ryuka if he is willing to become a captain, to which Ryuka agrees as long as the general fulfills his previous requests. Later, Demi informs the general that an army, including Reimais, is approaching, signaling the start of conflict among the Reimais. Miura and Ryuka make sure they have the necessary supplies before joining the assembled group. Miura confides in Ryuka, saying he feels comfortable talking to him, and Ryuka feels the same way. Meanwhile, the general announces the departure of the Reimais' first expedition. Earlier, he checked on Ryuka's progress with a musical score. Ryuka admits he struggles with understanding note values, but is confident he will learn soon. Ryuka credits the general for his improvement, but the general insists he is just keeping their agreement. The general reveals his plan for Ryuka to lead the next day's expedition, explaining that an Empire regiment, including Reimais like Ryuka, was spotted approaching by Demi. If you want part 2, leave a like and subscribe.